Bali yung pangatlo nating pang-ilan na ba to? Pangatlo sa akin, no? Yung financial management. Yung financial management can be defined as the management of the finances of a business or organization in order to achieve the financial objectives. The key objective of financial management would be to create wealth for the business, to generate cash, and provide an adequate return on investment, bearing in mind the risk that the business is taking and the resources invested. There are three key elements to the process of financial management. Una, yung financial planning. Financial planning, management need to ensure that the enough funding is available at the right time to meet the needs of the business. In the short term, funding may be needed to invest in equipment and stocks, pay employees, and fund sales made on credit. In the medium and long term, funding may be required for significant addition to the productive capacity of the business or to make acquisitions. Number two, yung financial control. Financial control is a critically important activity to help the business ensure that the business is meeting its objective. Financial control addresses questions such as, are the assets being used efficiently? Are the business's assets secure? Do management act in the best interest of shareholders and in accordance with business rules? Number three, na key element is yung financial decision making. The key aspect of financial decision making relates to investment, financing, and dividends. Investment must be financed in some way, however, there are always financing alternatives that can be considered. For example, it is possible to raise finance from selling new shares, borrowing from banks, or taking credit from suppliers. A key financing decision is whether profits earned by the business should be retained rather than distributed to the shareholders via dividends. If the dividends are too high, the business may be starved of funding to reinvest in growing revenues and profit further. Almost every firm, government agency, and other type of organization has one or more financial managers. Financial managers oversee the preparation of the financial reports, direct investment activities, and implement cash management strategies. Managers also develop strategies and implement the long-term goals of their organization. The duties of financial managers vary with their specific titles, which includes controller, treasurer, or finance officer, credit manager, cash manager, risk and insurance manager, and the manager of the international banking. Pag sinabi natin controllers, direct the preparation of the financial reports such as the income statement, balance sheet, and an analysis of future earnings or expenses that summarize and forecast the organization's financial position. Ang controller are also in charge of the preparing special report required by regulatory authorities. Often, controllers oversee the accounting, audit, and budget department. Then yung treasurers and finance officers. It directs the organization's budget to meet its financial goals. They oversee the investment of funds, manage associated risks, supervise cash management activities, execute capital raising strategies to support a firm's expansion, and deal with mergers and acquisitions. Yung mga credit managers naman oversee the firm's issuance of credit, establishing credit rating criteria, determining credit ceilings, and monitoring the collection of past due accounts. So, halimbawa sa school, ang credit managers, sila yung nasa credit and collection department. Yung mga cash managers naman, they monitors and control the flow of cash receipts and disbursement to meet the business and investment needs of the firm. For example, yung cash flow projection are needed to determine whether loans must be obtained to meet cash requirements or whether surplus cash should be invested in interest-bearing instrument. Then meron din tinatawag na risk and insurance manager. They oversee the program to minimize risks and losses that might arise from financial transactions and business operations. They also manage the organization's insurance budget, Managers specializing in international finance development, financial, and accounting system for the banking transactions of multinational organization. Yung mga financial managers, they play an increasingly important role in the mergers and consolidation and in global expansion and related financing. This area requires extensive specialized knowledge to reduce risk and maximize profit. Financial managers increasingly are hired on a temporary basis to advise senior managers on this and other matters. In fact, some small firm uh, contract out all their accounting and financial functions to companies that provide such services. Ang role ng financial manager, particularly in business, is changing in response to technological advances that have significantly reduced the amount of time it takes to produce financial reports. Financial managers now performs more data analysis and use it to offer senior managers idea on how to maximize profit. They often works on teams acting as business advisors to the top management. Financial managers need to keep abreast of the latest computer technology to increase the efficiency of their firm's financial operations. Ano yung strategic financing decision? Una, yung financial plans and financial statement forecasting. Sa financial plans, a finance manager plans the amount and sources of financing, and it matters very much whether such financing comes from the owners or from the creditor. Eventually, the company will have to pay back those funds, and management would want repayment to come from successful business operation. The finance manager balances his funding, equity, and debt sources in order to benefit from the features of each source. In choosing the financing, he involves such questions as what funds are required, what funding sources are available, how much financing should be sought from each source, what compensation would funding source require, and would operation be capable of supporting the required repayment of financing. The following are the benefit of financial planning. Number one, communicate the goal of the company and coordinate decisions from all the units. Measure performance and provides incentive, and require managers to think out aspect of their future operation. Sa financial statement forecasting naman, a financial statement forecast shows how all the decision of management affect the bottom line. The net income, total financing, and total investment are example of the so-called bottom line. Yun yung net income ng company. In proper planning procedures, all key strategies and plan are approved by the higher management only after looking at the integrated forecast of the business performance. Managers and analysts use three primary financial forecasting techniques. Number one, yung subjective or judgmental approach, yung trend or time series analysis, and correlation or relationship analysis. A subjective forecast, also called a judgmental forecast, predict future value based on the personal evaluation and experience of the manager. An expert give opinion based on his perceptions of the external and internal operating condition he faces. Yung judgmental forecasting is a method of forecasting that uses the forecaster's experience and opinion about the future business condition and capability of the company. Quantitative analysis supplements managerial judgment. It is a pattern from past data. It also checks the accuracy of judgmental forecasts. Quantitative trends forecasts predict financial variable using past data. Examples are sales forecasts based on past sales data and factory overhead costs based on the past sales and cost data. While yung trend forecast naman are prediction methods that derive patterns from past data. Example of patterns are growth trends and cycle. Yung time series model is a sound framework in cases when time is a surrogate variable or substitute for an unknown underlying explanatory variable. And number two, data on the underlying explanatory variable are difficult to obtain. In time series forecasting, the models reveal patterns from past data. An example of time series model is a linear regressions with time as dependent variable. Correlation forecasts are based on relationship among variables. A technique that overcomes this limitation of trend analysis is the correlation forecast. There are two methods of forecasting that uses correlation, the ratio technique and the regression analysis. The ratio technique in forecasting assume a constant relationship between two variables. The relationship must be established from past experience and management policy, while the regression analysis establishes the relationship between the actual level and the sales. Teka, wait lang. Nakikita ba? Next is the financial statement analysis. Financial statement analysis involves the evaluation of an entity's performance, present condition, and business potential by way of analyzing the financial statement, among others. Profitability of the business firm's ability to meet company obligation, safety of investment in the business, and the effectiveness of the management in running the firm. So, meron tayong tinatawag na horizontal analysis and vertical analysis. Pag sinabing horizontal analysis, it shows changes of corresponding FS items over a period of time. Changes in the value of a particular FS item can be analyzed in terms of amount or in percentage. The percentage change of the amount is calculated using the earlier period as the base period. Bali, pag sinabi nating horizontal analysis sa financial statement, para makuha natin yung percentage change, ang formula, yung most recent value less the base period value over base period value. For example, may dalawang financial statement, year 2023 and 2022. Para makuha mo yung percentage change nila, yung 2023 na amount, ileless natin yung 2022, yung year 2022, over sa year 2022, makukuha natin yung percentage change. Comparison can be made between an actual amount and a budgeted amount, with the latter serving as a base or pattern of performance. However, if a zero or negative amount appear in the base year, percentage change cannot be computed. Trend or index analysis, a subset of horizontal analysis, uses an index number of 1 for the base period and convert all financial statement items in the subsequent period as a percentage of the base in order to facilitate better understanding of performance over multiple period. Ito yung sample ng horizontal analysis. Meron siyang dalawang given na year. For example, ito income statement ng year 2022 and 2021. So para makuha natin yung horizontal analysis, yung difference ng 2022 at saka 2021, bawa 98.3 less 120.4, so meron siyang decrease na 22.1 million. Para makuha mo yung percentage increase or decrease niya, yung increase decrease, i-divide mo siya dun sa base period value, yung 2021. So yung 2022.1 divided by 120.4, makukuha natin yung percentage increase or decrease. So dito sa sample, meron siyang decrease na 18.4%. So ito, difference ng 98.3 less 120.4. So may decrease na 22.1. Pag kinuha mo yung percentage increase-decrease, bali yung 22.1 divided by 120.4. So ganun sa horizontal analysis. Kapag naman sinabing vertical analysis, it is the process of comparing figures in the FS of a single period. This is accomplished by expressing all figures in the financial statement as percentages of a common base such as total asset in the balance sheet or the net sales in the income statement. These converted statements are commonly called common size statement or percentage composition financial statement, open use for comparing multiple years of data from the same firm, companies of different size, and company to industry averages. So parang sa vertical analysis, single period lang yung ginagamit. Tapos ano siya, ganito yung sample niya. Pag vertical analysis. Pagkuha ng percentage. Ito lang kasi sa sinample ko, dalawa yung year pero pwede siyang single period. For example, itong 2022. Meron siyang total sales na 98.3. Merong sales returns and allowances, ilales yun para makuha natin yung net sales. Then merong cost sales na 52 million, may gross profit na 28.3. Yung operating expenses is 12, yung selling expenses 12, general 5. So ang total operating expenses 17. So sa vertical analysis, for example, ang net sales natin, siya yung 100%. So ang vertical analysis, for example, ilang percent ng total sales ang cost of sales. So para makuha mo yon, itong cost of sales mo na 52, i-divide mo siya sa 80.3. Ang makukuha is yung 64.8. Or for example, ilan ang percentage ng gross profit based on sales. So, ganun din, yung 28.3, i-divide mo lang siya dito sa 80.3 para makuha mo yung 35.2%. So, ganun naman sa vertical analysis. Ito yung sample ng vertical and horizontal analysis. For example, meron tayong balance sheet, condensed statement of financial position as of December 31, 2022. Meron tayong total assets na 5,000, total liabilities and equity na 5,000. And then meron ditong sinabi na for 2021, merong net sales na 1,600, cost of goods sold na 1,000, operating expenses na 300, and interest and tax charges na 200. Then for 2022, net sales na 2,000, cost of goods sold na 1,300, operating expenses na 300, and interest and tax charges na 220. So, sagutan muna natin yung number 2 and 3 kasi related siya sa vertical and horizontal analysis. So ito, yung number 2, prepare 2022 common size income statement and determine the gross profit margin, operating margin, and net profit margin. So para ma-compute mo, kailangan gawin mo muna yung income statement. So, ito. So, merong net sales sa 2022, merong net sales na 2,000, then sa 2021, 1,600 based dun sa sample. Yung cost of goods sold, 1,000 ng 2021 and 1,300 ng 2022 para makuha natin yung gross profit margin. Sa 2021, para makuha mo yung gross profit margin, net sales less cost of goods sold. So meron kang 600 na gross profit noong 2021 and then 700 noong 2022. Ile-less natin yung operating expenses, 300 sa 2021, 300 din sa 2022. Para makuha natin yung operating profit margin. 300 ng 2021 and 400 noong 2022. Bali, ano lang, gross profit margin less operating expenses. And then kung may mga interest and tax charges, doon sa given na sample, merong 200 noong 2021 and 220 ng 2022. Makukuha natin yung net profit margin na 100 sa 2021 and 180 sa 2022. So para masagutan natin yung ilan daw yung gross profit margin, lalaktawan ko tong number 1 ha. Yung prepare 2022 common size income statement. So ito na yung income statement. Compute daw the gross profit margin. Bali dyan sa given na sample ng 2022, merong gross profit margin na 700. So bali ang formula, gross profit over total sales. So dito sa given natin, ang gross profit is 700 divided by total net sales na 2,000. So meron kang gross profit margin na 35%. So i-divide mo lang yung 700 divided by 2,000. And then para ma-compute naman yung operating profit margin, sa sample natin, 400 yung operating profit margin ng 2022. So ang formula niya is earning before income tax, yung EBIT, divided by total sales. So sa sample, 400 yung operating profit margin divided by 2,000 na total sales. So ang total operating margin is 20%. And then yung net profit margin naman, ang formula naman yan is yung profit over sales. So dito sa 2022, 180 divided by 2,000. So ang sagot, 9%. And yung pangatlong question, compute the trend percentages for the following. So yung kanina, parang ano siya, yung horizontal analysis. Dito naman sa compute the trend percentages, ito yung vertical. So para makuha natin yung net sales, yung difference ng 2022, di ba ang net sales dyan is 2,000, less yung net sales ng 2021 na 1,600, meron siyang difference na 400. So kaya yung numerator natin is 400 divided by yung base, ang tawag dito? Yung value ng 2021 na 1,600. So meron tayong net sales percentage increase na 25%. So yung 400, yung difference ng 2022 na 2,000 less 1,600. So yun yung 400. Tapos yung magiging denominator mo is yung 1,600, yung net sales ng 2021. Diba? Yung most recent value less base period value. So 2,000 less 1,600. So ang makukuha mo doon 400 divided by mo doon sa base period value, yun yung sa 2021. So yung EBIT, yung earning before income tax. So dito sa sample natin, so dito siya, yung operating profit margin. So yung difference niya, 400 ng 2022 less 300. So makukuha natin yung 100. Ito yung sa numerator. Then i-divide mo dun sa dun sa base period ng 2021 na 300 para makuha natin yung increase sa operating profit margin na 33%. Then for the net income naman, dito sa sample natin, meron tayong net income.
Paano nga po yung EBIT? Saan nakuha yung 100 po?
Yung EBIT, earning before income tax. So itong operating profit margin, dito ka magbe-base. before tax siya. Yung income mo before tax. Yung ibig sabihin ng EBIT, earnings before income tax. So dito
Noted
sa
po.
sample, operating profit margin. So meron kang 400, less mo dito sa 300 para makuha mo yung difference, yung increase niya na 100. So yun yung numerator mo. Then di-divide natin dito sa most base period value na 300, kaya nakuha yung 33%. Then dito naman sa net income, so since net income na yan, after na nung tax, so dito ka sa net profit margin. So sa 2022, meron kang 180, sa 2021 may 100, yung difference niyan, 'di ba 80. So meron kang increase na 80 sa net profit margin pag kinumpare mo siya dito sa 2021. So yun yung numerator mo, 80 divided by dun sa base period value ng 100 para makuha mo yung increase sa net income na 80%. So yan yung horizontal analysis naman. Nagko-compare ka ng dalawang year, then kinukuha mo yung increase-decrease niya nung dalawang taon. Pero kapag vertical naman, single period lang, kinukuha mo yung really parang ilan yung percentage ng net income mo dun sa total sales. So i-divide mo lang yung dito over doon sa net sales na 2,000. Ayun. Then yung cash flow analysis. Sa cash flow analysis, it is a detailed study in the net change in cash and cash equivalent as a result of operating, investing, and financing activity during the period. So sa cash flow kasi merong tatlong activities. Yun yung operating. Pag sinabi nating operating activity, these are the principal revenue producing activity of the entity and generally relate to the changes in the current assets and current liabilities involved in company's normal operation. So dito sa operating activity, ang tinatandaan ko lang dito is related siya sa change in the current assets and current liability. Pag sinabi naman nating investing activity, these are the acquisition and disposal of long-term assets and investment not included in cash equivalent and generally relate to the changes in the company's non-current assets. So investing siya kapag ano naman siya, long-term assets and investment yung pinag-uusapan. Mga non-current asset. And then pag financing activities, these are the result in the changes in the size and composition of the contributed equity and borrowings of the entity and generally relate to the changes in the long-term liabilities and equity of accounts. So kapag yung transaction mo related sa long-term liabilities and equity ng company, financing activities naman yung classification. Ito yung sample ng statement of cash flows. From operating activity, for example, meron kang net income na 980,000, i-add mo yung adjustment for non-cash expenses like yung depreciation, makukuha natin yung net cash flows from operating activities. So, pag in-add mo yan, 1 million. Then from the cash flows from investing activities, sabi natin kanina, kapag investing, related siya sa mga long-term assets and investment at saka yung mga company non-current assets. So kapag meron kang sale of equipment, di ba ibig sabihin na naka-receive ka ng cash kasi nagbenta ka ng equipment. So plus siya. So plus na 300,000. Then investment in other company stocks. Ikaw yung nag-invest sa company. So parang nabawasan yung cash mo kaya deduction siya na 1 million. Then sale of land, ibig sabihin nagbenta ka ng land, naka-receive ka ngayon ng cash, so plus siya. Kasi dito sa cash flow, yung effect nung transaction mo dun sa cash. So kapag ni-net natin yan, meron siyang net cash flow used by investing activity na 500,000. And then kapag naman sinabi natin cash flows from financing activity, ito naman yung related sa changes in long-term liabilities and equity accounts. So dito sa sample, issuance of ordinary share capital. So naka-receive ka ng 400,000. Issuance of bonds payable, 100,000. Payment of long-term mortgage payable. So, deduction siya kasi nagbayad ka. Then, payment of dividends. So, nagbayad ka ng dividends, so deduction din siya. So, dito, meron kang net cash provided by financing activity kasi naka-positive siya. So, kapag positive, provided yung tawag. Kapag naka-negative siya, use. Ibig sabihin, lumabas yung cash. So, dito sa sample, meron kang net, since positive siya, ibig sabihin, dagdag sa cash, meron kang net increase in cash na 800,000. Ito yung sample ko dito sa cash flow analysis. The following information is taken from the Black Widow Corporation accounting records for the recent year. So, bali gagawa tayo ng cash flow statement. So, una, para mas madali, i-identify muna natin kung ano ba yung transaction. Kung operating ba siya, investing, or financing activity. Dito sa number 1, meron kang cash sales of 2,300,000. Ilabas na nga. Wait lang, ilalabas ko na. Ito, cash sales of 2,300,000. So una, i-identify muna natin kung operating ba siya, investing, or financing. Since related siya sa current asset na cash, nagbenta ka daw ng, meron kang sales na 2,300,000. So operating activity siya. So para madali siya, i-line mo siya dito sa operating. So since dagdag yan sa cash, ipapositive mo tong 2,300,000. So addition siya sa cash under operating activity. Then yung pangalawang transaction, nag-sold ka daw ng investment security for 230,000. Since ang transaction is regarding investment, 'di ba pag investment, investing activity siya. So meron kang na-receive na 230,000 ka ng investment. Since investing activity siya, dito mo siya ilalagay under investing activity. So ayan yung naka-positive siya na 230 kasi nagbenta ka ng investment, so naka-receive ka ng cash. And then itong letter C, taxes, fine, and penalties. Nagbayad ka daw ng taxes, fines, and penalty amounting to 80,000. So under siya ng operating activity, so magdededuct ka ng 80 dito under operating kasi nabawasan yung cash mo. So ma-minus ka ng 80,000. And then yung pang-apat, 150,000 in cash was borrowed from a bank. So umutang ka daw ng 150,000 sa bangko. So kapag ang pinag-uusapan is related sa long-term liabilities and equity, financing activity siya. So since nangutang ka sa bangko, so meron kang additional cash, so positive siya under financing activity, 150,000. And then yung pang-5, 940,000 was paid to supplier for inventory. So operating activity siya, nagbayad ka daw ng 940,000, so pabawas siya sa cash, so ide-deduct natin yung 940 dito sa operating activities. And then yung letter F, issued 1,000 shares of common stock for 250,000. So pag sinabing common stock, equity yung transactions niya eh. So under siya ng financing activity. So itong 250, since nag-issue ka ng shares, naka-receive ka ng 250,000, i-add mo siya dito sa financing. Then yung letter G, purchase land for future plant site for 980,000. So ibig sabihin, bumili ka ng land. So nabawasan yung cash mo kasi pinambayad mo siya para makabili ng land worth 980,000. So since ang pinag-uusapan na transaction is land na asset siya, non-current asset. So, under siya ng investing. So, since nagbayad ka, ide-deduct mo siya dito under investing activities. Then, dun sa letter H, nagbayad ka daw ng 180,000 for treasury shares. So, since equity yung treasury shares, under siya ng financing activity. So, nagbayad ka, nabawasan yung cash mo, ililess mo siya dito sa financing. So, 180,000. And then yung letter I, sold 500 of its 5% 10-year debenture bonds for 500,000. Financing siya kasi long-term liabilities yung transaction. Bonds siya. So, nagbenta ka, so naka-receive ka ng cash na 500,000. So, mag-a-add ka ng 500,000 dito under financing activity. Then yung letter J, nagbayad ka ng dividends of 250,000. Pag dividends, equity account siya. So under din siya ng financing activity. So itong 250,000, since nagbayad ka, pabawas sa cash, under dito financing. So magle-less ka ng 250,000. Tapos iaano nyo lahat ng transaction, ano yung effect niya sa cash. So dito sa operating, meron kang 2.3 million, nabawasan ng 80,000, then nabawasan ng 940. So meron, since positive do, ang tawag dyan, net cash provided by operating activity na 1,280,000. And then sa investing naman, naka-receive ka ng 230, nabawasan ng 980. So ang effect niya, net cash used in investing activity, since negative siya, used, ibig sabihin, naglabas ka pa ng cash. So, negative net cash used in investing activity na 750,000. And then sa financing naman, pag in-add mo to, tinotal mo yan lahat ng transaction dyan. Ang net niyan is net cash provided by financing activity na 470,000. Since dito sa sample, ang tinatanong is how much is the net cash provided by operating activities? Ang sagot dyan is yung 1,280,000. So lahat ng transaction affecting dun sa operating activities, ayun yung sagot dito, 1,280,000. Then dito naman sa number 2, yung net cash used in investing activity, yung 750. Then sa financing naman, yung number 3, net cash provided by financing activity. Since naka-positive to, provided yung tawag. So ang sagot sa number 3, 470,000. Then yung number 4, since ang tanong niya is net cash increase or decrease. Para makuha mo to, yung net ng transaction ng operating, investing, and financing. So, itong 1,280,000 less 750 plus 470, ay ito naman yung sagot dun sa number 4. So, pag ninet mo yan, ang sagot dyan, 1 million. Net cash increase kasi positive siya. Pag ninet mo tong tatlo, 1,280, 750, and 470, positive yung sagot, 1 million. So, ang tawag doon, net cash increase. Net cash increase of 1 million. So, yun. Para mas madali, una, i-identify mo muna kung ano bang activity siya, operating, investing, or financing. Tapos, ilalagay nyo kung ano ba yung effect niya sa cash. Dagdag ba siya or pabawas? So, pag padagdag, ipapositive mo. Pag pabawas, naka-negative siya. So, next is the financial ratio. Financial ratio are the relationship among accounts found in the financial statement that provide information about the firm's liquidity, solvency, stability, profitability, and other aspects of financial situation and potential. Major categories of financial ratios are as follows. Una, yung liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio measures an entity's ability to meet short-term obligation and provide insight on present cash solvency. Common examples include net working capital, current ratio, and quick ratio. Then meron din tinatawag na solvency ratio. or yung leverage ratio. It measures an entity's long-term financial viability. Common example include debt ratio, debt equity ratio, and times interest earned ratio. Then meron din tinatawag na activity ratio or yung asset utilization ratio or efficiency ratios. It measures an entity's ability to use its asset and manage its liability effectively in the current period. How quickly various accounts are converted into sales or cash. Common examples include turnover ratio and conversion period. And meron din tinatawag na profitability ratio or yung performance ratio. These are used to determine how well an entity can generate profit from its operation. Common example includes margin ratio and return ratios. Then yung market value ratio or yung market prospect ratio are used to help potential investors make equity investment decision through the use of trends in earnings, dividends, and stock prices. Common examples include dividend payout ratio, dividend yield, and price earning ratio. Ito yung mga basic rules in calculating financial ratio. When calculating a calculating a ratio using balance sheet amounts only, the numerator and denominator should be based on the amount as of the same balance sheet date. The same is true for ratio using income statement numbers, exception, calculation of growth ratio. Siyempre, pag growth yung pinag-uusapan, kailangan merong comparison. If the income statement amount and balance sheet account are used at the same time to calculate a ratio, example yung turnover ratio, the balance sheet amount should be expressed as an average for the time period represented by the income statement account. If the beginning balance of the balance sheet account is not available and cannot be computed from the given date, the ending balance of the account is used to represent the average balance. If the sales or purchases are given without making distinction as to whether made in cash or on a credit, assumptions are made depending on the ratio being calculated. Kapag turnover ratio, sales and purchases are made on credit. Kapag cash flow ratio naman, yung pinapakompute, sales and purchases are made in cash. As a rule, an operating year is assumed to have a 360 days unless specified otherwise. A 360-day period is preferred as this is consistent with a 12-month year and a 30-day per month. Alternatively, a year may be comprised of 365 calendar days, 300 working days, or 270 productive days. The number of the days to be used is specified in pag may mga problems naman for computation purposes, sinasabi naman doon kung ilang days yung gagamitin. Financial statement analysis helps in making financial forecasts, particularly the required additional funds needed or yung AFN, determined based on entity's capital requirement and from a variety of financial ratio. Yung asset is change in sales times yung asset divided by sales. Spontaneous increase in liability, change in sales times liability divided by sales. Yung increase in retained earnings, yung earning after tax less dividend payment. Yung AFN or yung additional funds needed from external sources, example, yung creditors and investors. Yung external fund needed may alternatively be computed using the following formula. AFN is equal to the total changes in equity less internal financing. Or pwede rin AFN equal assets less liability times yung percentage change in sales less yung projected sales multiplied by the profit margin or flowback ratio. Ito yung mga formula. Like for example, sa liquidity ratio. Meron tayong tinatawag na net working capital. Ang formula niyan, current assets less current liability. Para ma-compute naman yung current ratio or yung tinatawag din na working capital ratio, current assets divided by current liability. Then yung quick ratio or yung tinatawag na acid test ratio, ang formula is quick assets over current liabilities. Yung quick asset, pag sinabing quick asset, these are cash items and other current assets that can be quickly converted into cash. Example, yung cash, receivable, or yung mga marketable securities. Activity ratio naman, efficiency ratio, or assets utilization ratio, ito yung mga formula. Yung inventory turnover for merchandiser, ang formula niya is cost of goods sold divided by average inventory. Sa receivable turnover, net credit sales over average receivable. Pag payable turnover, net credit purchases over average payable. Sa finished good turnover for manufacturers, ang formula niya is yung cost of goods sold divided by average finished goods inventory. For work in process turnover for manufacturers to, cost of goods sold divided by average work in process inventory. For raw material turnover, cost of material use over average RM inventory. Sa inventory turnover naman, finished good turnover plus work in process turnover plus RM turnover. RM is yung raw material turnover. Sa ratio naman na age of inventory for inventory conversion period, ang formula is 360 days over inventory turnover. Sa age of receivable, 360 days over receivable turnover. Yung age of payable, 360 days over payables turnover. For the asset turnover, sales over average total asset. Sa fixed asset turnover naman, sales over average fixed asset. Sa normal operating cycle, age of inventory plus age of receivable. Sa cash conversion cycle, normal operating cycle less age of payable. Sa solvency ratio or yung leverage ratio, ito naman yung mga kino-compute. Yung debt ratio, ang formula niya is total liabilities over total assets. Sa equity ratio, total equity over total assets. Sa debt to equity ratio, total liabilities over total equity. Sa equity multiplier naman, ang formula 1 divided by equity ratio. Sa times interest earned or yung interest coverage ratio, yung EBIT, di ba, yung earnings before income tax, divided by interest payment. Equity multiplier or yung equity ratio reciprocal can be computed based on formula, assets divided by equity. Ito naman yung mga profitability ratio or yung performance ratio. Sa gross profit margin, ito, gross profit divided by sales. So operating profit margin, yung earning before income tax divided by total sales. Sa net profit margin naman, ito yung net profit over total sales. Sa return on sales, income divided by sales. Sa return on asset, income divided by average asset. Sa return on equity, income divided by average equity. Ano yung income na gagamitin? What income figure to use? If the intention is to measure the operational performance, income is expressed as before interest and tax. Alternatively, income before after-tax interest may be used to exclude the effect of the capital structure. If the intention is to evaluate the total managerial effort, income is expressed after interest and tax. Expressing income after interest but before tax is now rarely applied in the business practice. Income should include dividends and interest earned if the said investment are included in the asset base. If used in the context of DuPont technique, income must be expressed after interest taxes and preferred tax dividend. The DuPont model is based on the following: time asset turnover times equity multiplier. Sa market value ratio naman, ito yung market value ratio are anchored on earning per share or yung EPS, which is also considered a profitability ratio. Para makompute yung EPS or yung earning per share, net income less yung preferred dividends divided by weighted average common shares outstanding. EPS must be distinguished from common shareholders' book value per share, which is based on BBPS, common share stockholders' equity divided by number of common shares outstanding. Ito yung mga ratio. Kapag ang kukumputin nyo is price-earning ratio, ang formula niya is yung market price per share divided by earning per share or yung EPS. Pag dividends yield, dividends per share divided by market price per share. Sa dividend payout, dividend per share divided by earning per share. 100% dividend payout. Ito naman yung mga other financial ratio. A cash ratio, para makuha siya, cash plus marketable securities divided by current liability. Pag defensive interval, quick asset over average capital expenditure. Pag cash flow margin, operating cash flow divided by net sales. Time preferred dividends earned, ang formula niya, net income after tax divided by preferred dividends. Sa capital intensity ratio naman, total assets divided by net sales. Sa free cash flow, operating cash flow plus after tax interest less capital expenditure. So, ito yung sample para makompute yung mga ratio. Yung mga financial ratio. I-upload ko naman to sa basahin nyo na lang kasi baka hindi siya makita dito. Wait lang. So dito sa sample, Chef K Merchandising has 1 million common shares outstanding with each share price at 8 pesos. In 2022, the company declared dividends of 0.10 per share. The balance sheet at the end of 2022 showed approximately the same amount as the end of 2021. The financial statement for ayun, hindi siya napalitan, are as follow. So, ito yung yung income statement niya. Wait lang. Then, ito yung balance sheet. Paano nyo ba makikita itong For example, ang tanong, current ratio. Diba dun sa formula, current assets over current liabilities. So dito, mayroon tayong given na balance sheet. So para makuha natin yung current asset, dito ka titingin sa balance sheet. So ang total current asset, ito. Yung cash mo, yung accounts receivable mo na 440, yung inventory na 410, at saka yung cash na 220. So ang total current asset, 1,070. So sa current ratio, ang formula niya, current assets over current liability. Ang current liability naman, itong accounts payable na 190 at saka accrued expenses na 180. So ang total niya is 370. So ang computation niya, 1,070 na current asset divided by total current liability na 370. So ang sagot, pag ang tanong is yung current ratio, 2.89. Sa acid test ratio naman, ang formula niya is quick assets over current liability. So, ang computation,
Prof, excuse po, Prof. Tanong lang po.
sige. Ano? Ano, sir, yung tanong mo?
Ano po yung significance po nung magiging results nung ano po yung significance nung sa business nung magiging results ng computation ng formula? Say for example yan, yung current ratio na yan, anong magiging significance yan sa business? Paano i-interpret po yan?
Ito? Itong current ratio na to?
Opo, para saan po yan? Paano po yan? Ano
Kasi
po yung epekto niyan sa users po?
Like for example, sa current ratio, parang tinetest mo paano ka makakabayad ng utang mo. Kumbaga, how fast ka makakabayad ng utang mo given na ito yung current asset mo. Kasi pag sinabi mong current asset, available, convertible agad siya sa cash eh. So parang tinetest mo for every liability mo, kaya mo magbayad ng 2.89 times dun sa utang mo, sa current liabilities mo. Kaya mo siya tinetest na gano'n. Ibig sabihin, kaya mo magbayad ng liabilities mo. Kasi mataas yung current ratio mo 2.89.
So parang ideally po,
Dapat more than 1, oo.
So ideally po, hindi bababa sa 1 yan.
Oo.
So less than 1, negative na po yan para sa creditors po.
Oo, parang mahihirapan ka lang. Diba?
Bayad. Hindi po, Prof. Salamat po.
Sige po. Pag sa acid test ratio naman, quick asset over current liability. So, dun sa sample natin, ang total current liability natin is 370. And then, dun sa quick asset, yung 660. Ang composition ng 660, yung cash mo na 220 at saka accounts receivable mo na 440.
Guys, nawala yata si ma'am, no?
Nakamute daw ako.
Yan pala, ma'am.
Ayun, sa accounts receivable turnover, net credit sales divided by average receivable. So, dun sa sample kanina, ang net credit sales, dun kayo titingin sa income statement. Meron dong sales na 4,700. And then yung average receivable, since isa lang naman yung given na balance sheet, ang receivable doon is 440. So, ang accounts receivable turnover is 10.68 times. Then, inventory turnover, ang formula niya, cost of goods sold divided by average inventory. Ano yun? Umakit ang isyan. Sa income statement natin, ang cost of goods sold is 2,300 divided by average inventory. Average inventory na 410. So, ang inventory turnover, 5.61 times. And then, margin, ang formula is yung gross profit divided by sales. So, sa sample natin, ang gross profit is 2,400. And then, ang total sales is 4,400. So, meron tayong
na po maintindihan.
Bang wait lang po, hindi po namin maintindihan si Sir Patrick po.
Pamute naman po, pamute.
Baka umuulan na sa inyo, umuulan na dito.
Nakamute na po.
Umuulan na ba sa inyo?
Okay na po yata, ma'am. Nakamute na po yata siya.
Umuulan po.
Bumabagyo eh. Sige.
Opo, ma'am. Baka na
Oo, may bagyo. So, yun. Balikan nyo na lang yung sample na income statement ha. Nandun naman siya. Makikita nyo itong mga amount na nilagay ko dito. So, sa gross profit margin, gross profit over sales. So, ang gross profit natin based dun sa sample, 2,400. And then, yung total sales is 4,700. So, meron tayong gross profit margin na 51.06%. And then sa operating profit margin, ang formula is earning before income tax divided by sales. So dun sa sample, ang operating profit is, o yung earning before income tax, ito yung income before interest and taxes na 850 divided by total sales na 4,007. So ang operating profit margin is 18.09%. And then dun sa return on sales, ang formula is income over sales. So dito sa sample, ang income natin, ang net income is 420 divided by total sales na 4,700. So meron tayong return on sales na 8.94%. Then sa debt ratio, ang formula is total liability over total assets. So dun sa sample natin, ang total liability is 2,330. Nakuha yung 2,330 is dun sa total current liability na 370 plus i-add mo yung long-term debt na 1,980. Kaya ang total niya is 2,330 divided by dun sa total asset na 4,750 to, hindi 457. So, ang debt ratio is 50.98%. Sa ROA, total management effort, ang formula is income over average asset. So, meron tayong net income after tax na 420 divided by average asset na 4,750. Wait lang. Teka. Wait lang ha, parang mali. Wala ba internet? 220 plus 440 plus 410.
Meron po, ma'am.
4,570. $190 plus 180 plus 1,960 plus 1,810. Ayun. Ang papalitan ko yung yung balance sheet. Ang total assets doon 4,570. So tama dito sa formula. Papalitan ko lang yung sa sample ng balance sheet. Ang total assets doon 4,570. Ang total liabilities and stockholders equity 4,570 rin. So dito, ang formula is income over average assets. Kaya 420 na net income after tax divided by average assets. Since isa lang naman yung given na balance sheet, so ang average asset din niya is kung ano yung total asset na 4,570. So ang ROA is 9.19%. Then yung return on equity, ang formula is income over average equity. Sa sample natin, ang income is 420 divided by average equity. Para makuha yung average equity na 2,240, yan, i-add mo yung common stock na 1,810 at saka retained earnings na 430. So ang total nun is 2,240. So meron tayong ROE na 18.75%. Then sa debt to equity ratio naman, ang formula is total liability over total equity. So sa sample natin, ang total liability is 2,330 Nakuha yan doon pag inad mo yung total current liability na 370 at saka 1960 na long-term debt. So ang total 23330, then yung total equity natin is 2,240. So ang sagot is 1.04. Time interest earned, ang formula is earning before income tax over interest payment. So sa sample, meron tayong earning before income tax na 850 divided by interest payment or interest expense na 150. So 5.67 times. Wait lang. Ito yung what and why of financial statement. Financial decisions are typically based on data generated from the accounting system. Financial management, yung shareholders, potential investors, and creditors are concerned with how well the business enterprise is doing. The 3 reports generated by the accounting system included in the business enterprise annual reports, yung statement of financial position, yun yung balance sheet, yung income statement, and yung statement of cash flows. Although the form of this financial statement may vary among different businesses or economic units, their basic purpose do not change. The statement of financial position reveals the financial condition of the organization at a particular point in time. It tells what you own, yung asset, how much you owe to the vendors and lender, yung liabilities, and what is left, yung assets minus liability or known as an equity or net worth. A statement of financial position freezes the action giving the business enterprise's financial condition as of a certain date. The statement of financial position equation is asset less liability equals shareholders' equity. The income statement or yung profit and loss statement reveals the revenue, expenses, and net income or net loss for a period of time. A definition of each elements are as follows. Pag sinabing revenue, it is the increase in the capital arising from the sale of goods or the performance of services. When revenue is earned, it result in an increase in either cash, yung money na natanggap mo, or accounts receivable, yung amounts owed to you by customers. Pag sinabi mo namang expenses, decrease naman yan in capital and result from performing activities necessary to generate revenue. The expense is either equal to the cost of goods sold or the expenditure necessary to conduct business operation. Example, yung mga rent expense, salary, depreciation during the period. Then yung net income naman is the amount by which the total revenue exceeds the total expenses. The resulting profit is added to the retained earnings account, yung accumulated earnings of a business enterprise since its inception less yung dividends kung meron. If total expenses are greater than the total revenue, net loss yung results, decreasing the retained earnings. Every item of the revenue and expense has its own account. Such a system enables you to evaluate and control revenue and expense sources better and to examine the relationship among accounts classification. Revenue does not necessarily mean receipt of cash, and expense does not automatically imply a cash payment. Net income and net cash flow, yung cash receipts less cash payment, are different. For example, taking out a bank loan generates cash, but this cash is not a revenue since no merchandise has been sold and no services has been provided. Further, capital has not been altered by the loan because the loan represents a liability rather than a shareholder's investment and must be repaid. The statement of financial position or yung balance sheet is classified into major groups, yung assets and liability. An asset is something owned such as land and automobile. A liability is something owed such as loan payable and mortgage payable. Ito, dinefine lang naman niya yung assets. Assets is a classified statement of financial position, generally breaks down assets into 2 categories. Merong current assets and non-current assets. Non-current assets are further classified into long-term investment, yung property, plant, and equipment, intangible assets, and deferred charges. This breakdown aids in analyzing the type and liquidity of the assets held. Pag sinabi natin current assets, these are assets expected to be converted into cash or used up within 1 year or the normal operating cycle of the business. And pag sinabing long-term investment, it refers to investment in other company share capital, ordinary or preference shares or bonds where the intent is to hold them for a period greater than 1 year. So pag greater than 1 year, long-term yung tawag doon. Securities are reported in the statement of financial position at current market value. The investment cost includes the market price of the security when bought plus any brokerage fees you paid. If the intent is to hold the security for 1 year or less, it should be included in the current assets category and listed as a short-term investment o yung trading securities. Pag property and equipment, ang tawag doon, often called as plant assets, are the assets employed in the production of goods or services that have a life greater than 1 year. They are tangible, meaning they have physical substance. You can physically see and touch them and are actually being used in the course of business. Examples are the land, buildings, machinery, automobiles. Unlike inventory, these assets are not held for sales in the normal course of business. Intangible assets, these are assets with a long-term life that lack physical substance and that arise from a right granted by the government, such as patent, copyrights, trademarks, or by another business enterprise, such as franchise license. So, ang tawag doon, intangible assets. Pag deferred charges naman, these are certain expenditure that have already been incurred but are deferred to the future either because they are expected to benefit future revenues or because they represent an appropriate allocation of cost to the future operation. In other words, deferred charges are cost charged to an asset because future benefit exists. They are amortized to an expense in the year the related revenue is recognized and the benefit consumed in conformity with the accounting principle, requiring matching of expense to revenue. An example is a plan rearrangement cost. No cash can be realized from such asset. For example, you cannot sell deferred plan rearrangement cost to anyone because no one will buy them. Liabilities naman and shareholders equity. Sa liabilities, pwede siyang current or non-current. Pag sinabing current liability, those due in 1 year or less will be satisfied out of current asset. Example are accounts payable, short-term notes payable, and accrued expense liability kagaya ng mga salaries payable. Then yung long-term liabilities naman, ang example nito, which have a maturity of greater than 1 year are bonds payable and mortgage payable. The current portion of a long-term liability that that is to be paid within 1 year is shown under current liabilities. And then yung shareholders the statement of the financial position consists of the share capital, additional paid-in capital, and retained earnings. Pag sinabi natin share capital, it describes the ownership of the corporation in terms of a number of shares outstanding. Pag naman additional paid-in capital, it shows the amount received by the business enterprise over the par value for the share capital issued. This helps track of the par value of the issued shares and the excess over par value for it. And then yung retained earnings, it represents the accumulated earnings of the business enterprise since its inception, less dividends declared and paid to the shareholder. There is usually a surplus in this account but a deficit occur if the business has been operating at a loss. So nagne-negative yung retained earnings account kapag lost yung business. Yun. I-upload ko na lang tong dalawang PowerPoint dun sa Google Classroom para masundan nyo yung mga formula.
Sige po, salamat po.
Yung sa personal finance, tapusin nyo ha.
Yes, Prof.
Kasi yun na lang yung ko.
Prof question.
Sige.
Yung regarding sa personal finance, kasi 'di ba sumagot na kami. Possible po ba kasi na di kasi namin alam kung na re-receive niyo po hindi eh.
Sige, i-check ko.
Thank you, Prof. Salamat
Pero
po.
meron ng 14 na nag-submit.
Sige po. Salamat.
Ang dami nyo din kasi nakita ko dun sa summer ang enrollment nasa 106. Tapos yung sa second sem.
Pagkakalam ko po nasa 300 plus na po kami lahat.
Kaya sabi ko babalikan ko after nitong cluster. Kasi meron yung iba nag-message sa akin pa isa-isa
Tsaka,
300 na kayo.
question lang din pala,
Later
Bro,
na,
paano
later.
pala
I
yung
have
process
class.
ng
Don't do
grades
that, ha?
namin na nakikita
Later.
din ba namin yun? Di ba kasi po, per cluster tayo, nasa second cluster na kasi tayo.
Magbibigay kami, magsasubmit din kami sa registrar. Gigradean daw lahat nung nasa nasa enrollment. Kaya babalikan ko lahat.
Paano po yun, Prof, yung mga, di ba po, sabi niyo po, gigradean yung lahat na nasa enrollment, paano po yung wala pang mga ID? Are they considered also? Or kasama ba sila sa mga, kahit nandito din sila? Kasi
Ano
katulad
ba ID? Pag may student ID number kayo, ang assumption mo, naka-enroll kayo. Wala lang kayong ID, yung card.
Paano po yung Prof, yung
Later,
meron kasi katulad ako kasi late lang ako nabigyan ng ng student ID pero umattend na kami ng classes. Ang nangyari kasi nung katulad sa ibang Prof po, nag-send sila ng list of students. So wala doon yung pangalan namin gawa ng wala nga kaming student ID. So mabibigyan din kaya kami ng grado kahit umattend naman po kami doon sa kanya.
Hindi, halimbawa sa akin, lahat naman ng subject, nagbigay ako ng exam nila.
Opo.
Ay, consider ko yun. Yung lahat ng naabutan. Pero alam ko, hinabol na ni Dean Norma yung yung enrollment nyo, kaya ang dami lumabas sa
Sige, Prof. Salamat, Prof.
Nasa 300. Pero nasa 994 lang kayo ngayon.
Ang tinatanong po nung iba, yung, di ba sila Clifford, nag-start po sila sa inyo, tapos hindi sila naka-attend sa kay Sir Darwin. Yun po yung tinatanong niya kung paano yun, hindi siya naka-attend ng cluster 1.
Ang sabi ni Dean Norma sa akin, sa pag-ikot ulit, nung
Bali po, pag-ikot ulit, saka sila po mag-ano ng cluster 1. Paano po yun sa graduation?
Anong paano sa graduation? Kasi 'di ba hindi pa nila nakuha yun, di wala pa.
Okay po. Copy.
Doon sa reg form nila parang nakita ko ang subject lang yung ngayon for cluster 2. I-evaluate naman niya ni Ma'am Rodelas tsaka ni Dean Norma. Tsaka kapag may mga nag-PPM naman sa akin, binabalikan naman namin.
Later, ha?
Sa akin, Prof, nakakailang follow-up na ako dun sa evaluation and assessment ng mga crediting ng ng subjects na take na during college days. Wala pa rin feedback po eh.
Hindi ka pa rin sinasagot ni Ma'am Rodelas?
Yes po, even if dun sa parang meeting last week, wala namang feedback po. Nag-raise na rin ako ng question dun eh.
Ito ba yung full name mo talaga? Jerlo
Apo.
Perez.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Sige, follow up ko kay Ma'am. Kasi ngayon lang yung mga summer, ngayon parang last week nga lang naipasok sa system eh.
Cluster 1 po ako eh.
Oo nga, ibig sabihin, cluster 1, nandun ka na, naka-enroll ka na.
Apo.
Sige, pa-follow up ko kay ma'am.
Sige po, Prof. Salamat po.
Pwede po
Sige.
makita yung list ng 14, sabi niyo nakapagpasa na sa inyo. Or
Ano daw?
paano po malaman?
Ano po?
Pwede po malaman na makita yung 14 na nakapagpasa na sa inyo.
Sige, papa-screenshot ko mamaya tapos send ko dito sa GC.
Salamat po.
Okay. Pag may message nyo lang ako, babalikan ko namang lahat ng nasa cluster ko.
Apo, sige po. Salamat po, Prof.
Sige po. Ingat kayo, may bagyo.
Ma'am, pwede po
Apo.
magtanong.
Okay po, Prof.
Okay.
Po, ingat.
So,
Sige,
ma'am.
bro.
Ma'am, pwede po magtanong.
Kailan kayo
Last
mag-school,
week
Prof, para
natin
makita
si
tayo, Prof?
Ano daw?
Last week natin
Kailan po kayo
is
mag-visit sa school?
Kayo?
Kayo po, para pag pumunta kami doon, ma-meet namin kayo.
Araw-araw ako na